the first panel is with Joe Haslam, who's Distinguished Professor of Business School, and then also with Gloria. So officially, introduction over, panel begins. So Gloria, welcome. It's great to be with you this morning. How are you?
Thank you, Joe. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So everyone is like the first panel. Everyone's really excited to be here. And we're going to talk for 20 minutes or so about the metaverse. So, you know, you're a lawyer, I guess, and lawyers live in the world of definitions. So do you have a definition of the metaverse?
Well, actually, for a lawyer, I'm sorry for the audience, I have to say that metaverse as such, it doesn't exist yet. Because what I hear all CEOs of these platforms define, actually, it's not happening today. It will happen in 5 years, 10 years, you know? But, well, I think that we can define it as an experience that is composed by different technologies, like smart contracts, crypto, NFTs, intelligent, artificial intelligence, and so on. So it's like one step further of the internet we know today, and it will bring new legal problems.
Sure, great. I mean, I always think about like what should we be worried about? I mean, that's sort of like legal things. I mean, are discussed by legal scholars and things like that. But I mean, should we be worried about? Is this something that could be bad as well as good?
Well, let's see how it evolves. Well, I think that it will have new risk because it goes one step further in technology. But my personal point of view as a lawyer is that the key risk, we have it nowadays in the way we approach many services. This means, for example, that on the internet and in many platforms, users, we don't like to pay for access, okay? So we want to get free access to services. To get free access to services, we become products.
Yeah, someone has to pay, basically.
Someone has to pay for it. So we accept to sell our data and to receive advertisement.
Yeah.
So that is the exchange that exists today, and it's the one that it looks that it's gonna be also present in the metaverse.
Sure.
But take into account that in the metaverse, in this metaverse that it will exist in 5-10 years, where you have glasses that they will track your eyes direction, how many times you blink or your heart rate and so on, they will be gathering biometrical data and very, very sensitive data. So same risk you have today because you're not paying for an access and you're giving your data. It's going to be the same. I mean, the background is the same, but it's going to be increased because they're going to have much more data to process. Okay, so the starting point of the risk, I think,
is more data. And what have we learned? Because it's the same companies that are behind this, right? Facebook, Google, Apple, all of the companies that brought us, you know, these kind of, in many ways, is tracking us like we've never been tracked before, and something that we've learned. And their argument always was they didn't understand the power of the tools they were making. And that's certainly what Facebook say. So have we learned anything from the way that we, you could almost say we failed to regulate everything that you know, Facebook and Google have done? So have we learned something from the first generation that we can bring into the metaverse?
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot of things, and actually the different pieces of the metaverse, they're going to have a regulation that actually is being under construction now. For example, let's think about the Digital Market Act or the Digital Platform Act that is going to limit how these platforms, especially gatekeepers, use our data and how they combine the data they gather with the data of other vendors. So there are already some limitations in place that they're gonna still existing in the metaverse.
Sure.
And there are a lot related as well with GDPR. But what is going to be very, very complicated in the metaverse is how is going to be the balance between users accepting terms and conditions and this immersive virtual reality where maybe it's going to be a pain because you'll need to be all the time accepting, you know, like the consent giving a specific consent for the use of whatever data you're generating in this interaction. So I think we've learned a lot. But GDPR, it's a regulation that companies don't like much because you need like explicit acceptance of many consents and so on. And actually, if Metaverse is going to be like so real life that you're moving from one Metaverse to another, interoperability and so on, these terms and conditions acceptance, let's see how it works.
Yeah. Can I ask you, because I like asking lawyers at things like weddings and stuff like that, like do you actually read the terms, when you're installing an app, do you read the terms and conditions?
Well, many times I do read it because I think, well, it might be interesting because this service is similar to this service of a client of mine, so let's see what they say. But no, in real life, you don't read the terms and conditions. This is clear. No one reads the terms and conditions. Probably, if you read them, you will not sign.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. Also, it is true that many terms and conditions are not valid. If you go to trial, they will be declared null. So, but, well, no.
Yeah. Something I'm always interested in, I don't know whether any of my students are here, maybe they usually don't come because they hear enough of me in class, so why would they come? But do you think that younger generations view it differently to older generations?
Definitely. Yeah, when I talk to younger people and say like, well, this is impressive, I just landed in Heathrow and I've got, in my cell phone this ad on this restaurant, and they know exactly that one day I've been there, or I've said a friend of mine in the chat that I would like to go, whatever. For me, it's amazing. People say, but this is wonderful, because without you explaining, they're giving you the information you need. So this sense of privacy that we do have, I think younger generations don't have it. From my old vision perspective, this is a risk because they put themselves at risk, but well, they don't have this perception.
Yeah, I mean, these in law, like economics, like medicine, there are a lot of cyclical things, so it's, some people would say that the next generation, I'm talking about people, I guess less than 10 years, they might take it differently, right? I mean, this is, we talk a lot about things like climate change, and people will say like Generation Z will save us, that people overreact. I mean, we were so grateful to get these services that we embraced everything. And then the next generation knew no alternative. But there is an opportunity for a generation that comes on. I mean, that's what we see in economics. Some people love debt, then the next generation are careful about debt. So there might be a possibility that in the future, maybe we won't be around. But do you see any privacy backlash ever that people will actually stop and think about this?
Well, sometimes I think that the next crisis in the world is going to be a data crisis.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, I think the amount of data that is flowing from one part of the world to another, it's crazy, and I'm not sure that we're taking the right measures to control it. So.
I know some companies, I know people who work for them, and they say they don't even show us all the information. They can kind of if you could see the information we have on you, you would be terrified. That's basically what they tell me. But have you ever, asking you for specific cases? I know you can't talk about every lawyer I talk to says they can't mention clients, but are there kind of cases where even yourself have caused you to change your behavior, having seen just how much information people have on you?
Well, yes. Here, one of the problems is using data, artificial intelligence, and for example, in DeFi, this decentralized finance, for example, they do have a sort of scoring of yourself based on you're not giving any data. They are analyzed for yourself, and you could be granted a loan or not, and just based on data that you don't control. So I don't think this is fair because
in China, they actually, if your credit score goes beyond, they won't let you book an airline flight or something like that. They won't let you make a credit stuff. And
yeah, but as a human being, even if in the past you have committed errors, you can change.
Yeah.
A machine will never understand that. There's no way of rectification, so it's tough.
That's pretty scary. And just in terms of working for these companies, I mean, are you surprised somehow that people like there are other areas like cigarettes and things like that people stopped working for? I mean, do you think that people still want to work for Google, Facebook, and they're the exciting companies to work for?
Yeah, I think still there are very interesting companies to work with, especially because what they do very good is they partner very good with corporates, because all this about Metaverse is that they're looking, their clients is end users, but also corporates and startups that want to make business in the Metaverse. So working for this platform is like, it's going to be like working in government, because they are like virtual worlds. And if you work for Meta and you have a high position deciding how some things in the Metaverse are going to work, maybe it's like being in the board of ministers or something like this of your digital land. So definitely there are great places to work. Well, it depends on the person, but they are,
Sure. I mean, that's actually a good link to what I want to talk about now, which is the whole area of how laws are made, because it's only people behind the scenes know this. So can you sort of lay out what you think will happen? So, who is there somebody right now whose job it is to legislate for Metaverse? So talk to me about the process by which a law will be made and how long it will take.
Okay. Well, actually, there's many aspects of the Metaverse that they are already regulated or being in the way of being regulated. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, Metaverse, it's an experience or something that it will happen in the future, but it actually is the result of different technologies. And these technologies are being regulated, or at least are being regulated at the European Union level. As you know, there is the GDPR, Regulation on Data Protection, there is the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, there is the e-commerce law for any e-commerce transaction that happens in the Metaverse, Trademark Regulation. You just have to think, for example, if you're McDonald's, you're not going to apply for food trademark, but you have to apply in the Metaverse for something that is an NTF, software service, which is something different, but regulation is the same. So there is a regulation, being drafted on artificial intelligence in the European Union. So the different pieces of the Metaverse, they are regulated or under regulation. Cryptos, for example, in Metaverse, usually you don't get property, you get like a license, or actually you buy an NTF.
Yes.
Usually you buy it with a cryptocurrency. So as you know, there's also a regulation that is going to be published very soon, the MiCA, Markets in Crypto Asset Regulation as well. All these are European Union regulations that I have to say that unfortunately most of the platforms leading the Metaverse, they are not located in the European Union. They are located whether in the US or in China. These are the giants at the cutting edge of Metaverse. So in Europe, yes, we do have a regulation, but how this regulation it is produced. Most of the regulation of this sort of regulation is produced by the European Union. Now, the regulation, before there used to be directives that they needed to be transposed in each jurisdiction, but now most of the regulation in the European Union are regulations. Regulations means that it's not a directive, it's just it's directly a regulation that you apply directly in each country. So what they're trying in the European Union to speed up this digital assets regulation is to have direct European Union legislation that can be directly applicable in each country. So I think in the next 2 years we will have most of the regulation, we need to face the most relevant problems of Metaverse, because as I say, what you need to do is decompose the different pieces of Metaverse to identify the legal problems and the answers. But from my knowledge, it doesn't exist as such a regulation covering the Metaverse as a whole. This does not exist, and I don't think there's a plan for having a regulation on Metaverse as a whole.
Yeah. So if it's going to be on the basis of an EU regulation, then there won't be any sort of jurisdiction shopping, no? I mean, you won't really be able to go to Luxembourg or Malta or Ireland or somewhere. It will largely, the regulations, whether they are data, I mean, I guess they're mostly data, they will apply everywhere within the EU 27, yeah?
Yeah, one of the things of these regulations and not directive, they pursue is not to have this arbitrage or gold plating that we have nowadays with many regulations in the European Union. But still, there are some areas that they are not harmonized, like, for example, taxes.
Yeah.
So, having a tax attractive jurisdiction, it will always, be, like a good attraction for corporates.
Lots of people who come to live in Spain complain about the GDPR regulations and more specifically data protection. They say that Spain has one of the strongest jurisdictions. I mean, is that a fair comment? Do you think that it's stronger than it needs to be?
Well, I think that in theory, the regulation has to be exactly the same, because this is one example of regulation, not directive. Because previously we had a Spanish law on data protection. Now it's a European Union regulation. But what we do have is an agency, data protection agency, that is very protective.
Yeah.
So,
agencies need to show their work. No agency ever went like, let's do nothing.
Yeah.
We only have 5 minutes left now. It all goes very quickly, but I want to ask you just about lobbying and how much effect. There's always this thing in Washington where you studied previously. Like I think Amazon have about 5,000 people working there. Google have about 2,000 people working there. I mean, to what extent do these companies in Europe now, we know what happens in the US, to what extent do they lobby the European Union? Can you tell us what's happening behind the scenes?
Well, they are lobbying everywhere, definitely. But the situation now with the European Union is, my feeling is a little tense, because the European Union, they say that they're going to stick, with very protective regulation.
Yeah.
And for example, Facebook or now Meta, sometimes they say, okay, we're leaving Europe. And in Europe say, leave, we don't want you. I say, well, we don't want you, we need you for the time being, we don't have an option for this. But yes, this, we work for some of these companies when they do business in Spain, and one of the things I find impressive is that they all hire people that used to work in government, in governmental agencies, public servants at the highest level, and they're lobbying everywhere, Brussels, Paris, Washington, all over the world. And the time to lobby is now, because this regulation, as I mentioned before, is going to be built in 1-2 years. So yeah, it's the time to lobby, and they know that one article of one of these regulations can cost them millions of dollars or bitcoins or whatever. So yes, they're lobbying hard.
Yeah, my international relations students, I tell them that they have great opportunities because they often do a career in international relations expecting to be civil servants, and I'm like, no, you could get a job in Airbnb or in Facebook or someone, because it's often surprising. I deal with a lot of tech people, how little they know about government. You know, like if you grow up around people who have studied politics, they can tell you, the populations of a country, whether it be a decentralized system, even whether it's a right or left divide or whether there's populist movements. But a lot of people who work in tech, like Mark Zuckerberg, has, I think he would struggle to tell you the Prime Minister even of Germany, like it's really quite scary to see how much power these guys have and how little they know about really anything, and also they're not surrounded by people because
amazing teams.
I'm always have a big shock when I have that. Okay, so sort of as closing words, maybe just if you could give the audience sort of like what should they be reading, where can they get more information, is there any, your own website, obviously you're perfectly allowed to plug your own company, we're a commercial organization. But are there any other sources where they can go, where people can find more information about what's regulation in the metaverse?
Well, all the internet sites like Spin Extra and so on, because here you have to live day to day, because if you stay out 1 week, things have changed. Yeah, so stay in the press, follow what's going on, because today it doesn't matter what newspaper or what press you read, because metaverse and crypto is all over, Yeah, of course, if you want to get information on regulatory issues of metaverse and crypto, you can subscribe to a service that we do have at FinRex 360. That is free, and you get information, for example, when MiCA gets approved or where the Digital Market Act gets approved, you'll get this information as on the website, and it's for free. So.
Okay, thank you very much. We're out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Gloria, and thank you for your audience. You will live in immortality because the session is recorded and they are on YouTube and all of that. So if you found it interesting and there was someone who wasn't able to attend, it should be up on YouTube, as soon as they get everything done. So just remains me to thank the audience, to thank you, and we're now going to have a break of about 20 minutes before we have the next session. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.